So now you're here again, knocking at my door. A little too late for, I'm sorry for. The lights went out cause you kept cutting the cord, and I started to fade into your grave.
Welcome everybody, this is Jonathan Rossi. We're at the Cyber Awareness Show. I'm so happy to be able to invite my friend from Sierra Leone, Dorian, Collier. Oliver Collier, you use all three or do you have a preference?
Dorian Collier, Oliver Collier, the one that's easier for people to pronounce, I
guess. Okay, yeah, we'll use Dorian today. How about that?
Yeah, Dorian is okay.
All right, wonderful. So a little bit about the Cyber Awareness Show. We want to continue that conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, where a lot of you all joined from over 20 different countries. And what was fascinating is that we had perspectives, insights, and a lot of people saying, we want people back, and particularly you, Dorian. And that's why we wanted to have you back, because we didn't give you a chance to speak a little bit more, not just about cybersecurity, but about your story, experiences beyond just cybersecurity. Because what we're doing here at the Cyber Awareness Show is exploring stories and learning about the people behind cybersecurity. So Dorian, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so let's start before Dorian, the cybersecurity. How about Dorian back in the day? So look, tell me a little bit about where you were born, a little bit about your experience pre-cybersecurity.
Well, I was born in at the Netland Hospital in Freetown, May 20th, 1991. So I'm 29 now, getting old. And in my early years, I always pictured myself going into tech and, more or less tech and robotics, because when I was younger, I was into things like Gundam, Power Rangers, all of these kids shows that were heavy on the sci-fi front. So that took me up to my Form 3 level, I think it's called grade 10, I don't know, in the US. So in the end, I had to divert to arts, to the arts class instead of the science class, because I went to the arts. I I let myself down, I guess. But then I found out that I was quite in love with the arts. I love poetry. I love reading literature. I love books. I'm into all of those kinds of stuff. So then I had a conflict of interest after taking my A levels. I could either go to university, and because in those days, when you come from the arts stream, you can only go one place. You go to be a lawyer. Either go to university and be a lawyer and not be totally in love with it, or just say, hey, let me just start all over and go to a prometric center and start my education in ICT, because I was already into tech at that time. So my best friend, Vincent Obi, he put me on this path. He was like, hey, man, I know you've just finished your A-levels. Let's just go admit ourselves at the Silicon Pro Prometric Center. And because they were the ones doing like the A+, the CCNAs and the MCSAs back in the day. And let's just forget about this college thing. So, of course, my parents weren't too pleased, definitely. But I think the verve and the commitment that I showed when I started doing it, because then I was doing what I loved, I think it showed on my face and in my behavior. And in the end, they were backing me 100%. So when we were at Silicon Pro, everything just changed. Went through the A+, N+, up to CCNA level at 19 years. So after that, in those days, well, still, CCNA cost about $300 to take. I did not have $300 to go take a CCNA, like external examination. And I was so afraid that I might fail that I wouldn't say I chickened out, but that amount of money in those days was like crazy money. So I pursued another diploma in management information systems from the Association of Business Executives in the UK. and I cleaned that out totally. Like, I wouldn't say easily, but it was a good experience. So that brought me from the pure technical to more of a management style of ICT moving forward. So that acted as a bridge between my technical knowledge and my managerial skills, because you can't be all technical in ICT. You need to know how to manage people and manage stress at the same time. After that, I finished my diploma, my higher diploma in management information systems. Then I started working at, I started working with my friend, the same friend at one person business, right? We were going around like doing mystery shopping, like going to places, seeing what's wrong, and just recording the abuses of power and blah, 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 and then coming back and giving a report. So that went on for about a year. And the lady still owes me. She's still not fully paid me. Like, this is 10 years ago. Then I had the chance to come into the government workforce in the civil service 7 to 8 years ago. And that was my first taste of like real full-time like job. And as I was recruited into the civil service, in about 1 month, I was sent to then NRS, the National Registration Secretariat in those days. And they wanted to start this big program because everything in Sierra Leone was pen and paper, pen and paper, pen and paper. They wanted to modernize the civil registration like process. So I was blessed to be part of that team. I mean, we started from the ground up. When we went there were only papers all over the floor, rats eating papers and stuff like that, because it's a very old building. So we more or less started the procedure from scratch there, the team and I learned so much in those 4 or 5 years, man. That's what made me into the ICT professional I am today, and started my journey into cybersecurity.
When you say pen and paper, you mean there was no digitization of anything?
Yeah.
Right?
No
copies.
digitization at that time. Everything was, yeah.
Okay, let's go a little back again. You said gaming, right? Did you say something about interest in technology as a gamer? Or is it?
Yeah, that's true. When I was younger, I guess a little bit still now, I would call myself
it's okay if you tell us you're a gamer.
Because I didn't know. no, people love gamers right now. Like, I was an introvert in those days, and I remember my brother, who had left for England, left his Nintendo, like the original OG Nintendo, like gaming console. So I remember playing Mario and whatnot. This was when I was like 6, 7 years old. Because in those days, the electricity will only come like once a week on Saturday, maybe even 2 or 3 weeks, because it was during the Civil War, so things were not so perfect at that time. So getting into gaming, graduating to the PS1, I'm a PlayStation guy. So when you play those games, you see these wonderful vistas. You go into a little bit of sci-fi with some of these games like Metal Gear Solid and all of that. You know, I think games make, like, a lot of ICT people right now, they were built by games, because most of us are gamers. All the ICT people I know are like gamers to the core. Science people are built by games. So games had a lot of input in my childhood and in my formative years, as I would say it kept me from trouble. And it's more or less, I think it's not the right thing to say now, but it showed me that in those days you did not need a lot of friends to be happy. If I can put it that way.
But you can communicate with people over the games, right? There was a community there.
Oh no, in those days, man, my first internet connection experience was with Zane. It was called Zane at that time. That was after Millicom. That was in the early 2000s. In the days that I'm telling you about, there was no internet gaming or whatnot in those days. Like it's only been rampant in this past few years, this past 10 years in Sierra Leone as internet speed has caught up and whatnot. But in those days, it was like a LAN party. Bring and share. You call your friends over, you come and play. Crash team racing, other because I like racing games and whatnot. Tekken, you call your buddies over. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, you come and play. And there were even these little places in. I remember when I was going to school, there was these little shacks that you'll have two TVs and you'll have a PlayStation 2 because PS2 was reigning at that time. You have the PS2s and you'll have FIFA. Man, I have played FIFA more times than I have been asleep. I mean, in those days, when we came out from school, like we'll have our lunch money, we'll be like starving through lunch, man. I will take the money and we'll go to these places to play games. There was this place in Moritown Junction called Androsa. That was our spot. We would go there and we'll just play games 4 or 5 hours almost every day after school. Those were the good days.
Well, there were formative years for you, like gaming and security and getting involved in technology. You mentioned during that period, it was the Civil War, right? This is the 90s, from I think 91 and early 2000s. So you were a teenager during that period, I imagine. And you were a gamer.
I was a child.
Oh, you're a child. So you actually, because you said 6 or 7 when you started playing. Okay, so you're even younger than that. Okay. So how was that
I was
period?
born in 1991,
because part of what we want to do is learn a little bit about, and let's back up a little bit, is that audience are going to have very little information and knowledge of Sierra Leone or Japan or whatever country we end up looking at. And even if you may not necessarily have the voice of the entire country, you are a person who works there. People want to know a little bit about what the state of Sierra Leone may look like from your perspective as a gamer, as a professional, as an independent security analyst, as a member of a previous civil force, but part of the government. Curious to learn about what the landscape looks like in security and how it's changed since the 90s and into today.
Yeah, like you started with the Civil War. Like the Civil War in Sierra Leone was quite scary, to be honest with you. I'm not going to lie about that. But we lived in Freetown, so we did not see or get the worst of it, to be honest. But all in all, the hardest thing about war is reconciliation. Like after all the atrocities have been committed, coming together and starting to rebuild from scratch. I mean, it's not an easy thing, like you saw in Rwanda. But in the end, we stuck together as a country, we stuck together as a people, and we started building ourselves up from the ashes and ruins of war. I think 2002, that's when I went into secondary school. That was 1 year after the war officially ended. So after in those early days, like I remember a memory, like when I was really young, when I was going to school, I think I was in class 6. I was sitting to the MPSC, like the test, the exams that you take to validate yourself into secondary school. So we were driving along, and then like someone's tire just went up, bang. Man, people were almost shitting themselves because you were just like from the war period where gunshots were like an everyday thing. So people were like, bam. Even my father was like, people just like freaked out. And then when everyone noticed it was a tire busting, like people just started laughing. People were just smiling and laughing to themselves in the street. So that's one memory that will stick with me till I die. So my first experience with a computer, I don't even think I remember the place's name because I was still in secondary school and I went there to learn word processing, Word, PowerPoint, and was there Excel in those days? I think so. I think Excel, yeah. So we started learning it, and I aced everything, of course, because I was really into it. And like when I say like gaming, like this is where gaming came in. There was a game called Danger Dave and Abe's World. I mean, half of the time we were playing that on the on the computer, so not even learning. So from that point onwards, I think we got a computer at home, wherein I started like fidgeting around. Like I like to open things up. I mean, that's how I messed up my Nintendo. Like I started taking it apart to see how this works and how that works. So a curious mind is always learning something and is always gaining knowledge. Yeah. So from those days, like the time when I really saw Sierra Leone embrace IT. Maybe there were others above me at that time because I was young at that time who had seen that before. But when I saw it on a ground level was when I started going to Silicon Pro and we started, you know, taking apart machines like this is this, this is that. If this goes down, this capacitor does this, and all of those little things. Learning these like minute, detailed kind of things. That's when I really like dove in to ICT, and ICT started. I use the word started. It started becoming a big thing in Sierra Leone. In those days, cybersecurity was not a huge thing. Nowhere in the world was it a huge thing. It was an aside. People will build systems and programs and whatnot and cybersecurity, but the security of their system would be an afterthought. So in 2016, 2015, I started reading up on cybersecurity. No, in fact, 2014, I started reading up on cybersecurity and getting myself, au fait with all of the terminologies and what it's about, and going in depth into backtrack in those days. And then I didn't even know there was a certification. So in 2015, I read up that there was a certification called S+. It's been going for a while, but I only knew about it in that time. So 1 year later, I got my S+ certification, and then that's when I started diving deep into cybersecurity now, with penetration testing and vulnerability analysis and all of that good stuff. So it's taken a while for Sierra Leone to catch up, to be honest with you, because I've had certifications for 5 years now, because I've also gotten the CYSA, and it's really hard to see people, like companies, asking for a security type person. They prefer to go there. Oh, we want a head of ICT route, and then they'll just tack on cybersecurity as an aside to their job description, instead of having a focused person concentrating on cybersecurity. But that has started changing, and I'm glad that the people leading the way with this change are the banks. Like the banks are not taking any crap right now. Like most of the InfoSec people I know are banks. They are hired by banks and work in banks because they deal with money, and you can't leave your system open and just hope for the best. So cybersecurity still has a go.
Yeah, interesting. What about, you were talking about building things from the ground up. Let's take a big picture view of Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone's about 7 million people, right? Something like that. And what is
going on to 8, yeah.
Is it okay? Oh, so it's actually closer to 8 million. So where are they in this process of digital transformation? You mentioned banks are taking the lead in making sure their systems are secure. And it makes sense why banks and financial institutions would take that lead. But what about the everyday Sierra Leonean? How does that look like? How does security stack against all the rest of the issues that may be going on in the country? Because I can look and compare to other places, and sometimes security is not even a concern for many people. And I'm curious to learn about, how does the everyday Sierra Leonean thinking about of security, and where are typically their interactions with online connectivity? What, if any, numbers are available, what is internet connectivity look like in Sierra Leone?
Okay. Like to go to answer your first question about the like digitization, like apart from the banks, the advent of the smartphone was huge. It was pretty huge in Sierra Leone. I mean, it opened up a huge world to people that had never, you know, seen the world before. To be honest with you, because you have a phone, you can do anything with the phone, go online and everything. But there is a caveat to that. There is a huge, huge caveat to that. I read somewhere, someone once said that giving the populace like phones, like Samsung phones, Techno phones, whatever type of phones, like giving the populace phones is akin to having a gun because you really have to educate the people on how to use it best. Like, for example, I give you this example today. There's this um, voice recording going around on WhatsApp saying that the Ghanaian president was saying something about the COVID situation being a plan, blah, 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 blah. And people are so susceptible to these kinds of misinformation. It's really, really bad because if you are not like if you are not educated enough to know the difference between fake news and something that is true, then it becomes a problem. Then outside forces can start planting fake information into the populace and causing issues. It's something that needs to be, that's the thing, it's hard to deal with something like this because if you try to deal with it, you will definitely end up trampling on people's digital rights. So the only way to do this is by going out and raising awareness about these issues, right? Most people have a phone in Sierra Leone. So everything gets shared so very fast, and that includes misinformation. During the Ebola pandemic, I will never forget this one. I mean, my father was like so pissed off when he heard this. Like, it was so scary during the Ebola pandemic. And this thing came out of Nigeria that, oh, if you wash with salt, you will be cured of Ebola, you will not have some nonsense stuff like that. And people were actually washing with salt. And then, so that type of thing is so, so very bad because misinformation kills people. Misinformation causes people to make the wrong decisions that might end up in the death of other people. So that is something that needs to be tackled with awareness raising and telling people that not everything you see on WhatsApp is like when I receive something from WhatsApp, the first thing I do to verify the news source, I go on the internet, I check. Because if a world leader says something that's controversial, right, it's going to be all over the news. So I go on the internet, I check, give it a couple of minutes, 30 minutes. If I see nothing come up, I'm like, this thing is fake. Anyone can record something and say, oh, this is this person. So that's another thing that needs to be looked at when we speak of not just like the cyber aspect of the security, but the hearts and minds of the people who use that needs to be secure. And speaking about internet penetration, I, of course, I don't have exact numbers, but the internet penetration is high and getting better because I remember working, like when I was at NCRA, going to Koinadugu district, we were doing like the SSN, like how would I call it, security safety net for the very poor of the country. So in order to get a signal, like in order to transfer the data from the kids back to HQ, we had to go like near a tree. Like there was this tree in a courtyard in a little raised hill that you had to go to. You can only get a signal when you're close to this tree. So that's why we usually had to trek like a little bit to go there to send the data and everything. But now with the companies like Airtel, Africell, and QCell, like the 4G network connectivity is pretty wide right now. And of course, Salcab and Seratel are doing their bit with the terrestrial fiber cables that will land in most districts I think maybe by the next 2 to 3 years. And the last mile issues are the ones that I believe will have to be taken into account, because like you experienced this the last time I was on, like the internet connection here can be pretty spotty. I'm not even going to lie about that. So those are the things that need to be taken into account right now and need to be improved upon, so that we can like actually enjoy the full bandwidth that we are receiving in Sierra Leone. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's so many different things we can go there. That's interesting how you say how to verify messages that may come up on WhatsApp. And that's a very interesting area to explore, because that's almost akin to when you have phishing in emails where employees at a company receive something. And usually if you're properly instructed and have the right awareness training, the instruction is you should not click, or if it's asking you to do something, you should pick up the phone and then call and ask, did you just email me X, Y? Did you send me this link and this request to make a payment? You know, things like that. It's almost similar to what you just described. You said you received something on your WhatsApp, and it seems like most people communicate information through WhatsApp throughout the country, right? And rather than just immediately consume that information, you verify. You go online, you go through at least through an alternative source. You try to cross-reference, and that's that's what I'm thinking is missing often, is with access to digital connected devices, is the education that needs to come with that. And so that's something I've always been thinking about as we do security awareness and having these conversations, is we want to have digital transformation done responsibly. So as we have more people accessing, and you mentioned the last mile, we want that to also come with education, so that people don't make those decisions based on maybe an emotion, or because somebody just posted something that's very charged emotionally during a pandemic or during Ebola. And we can talk about Ebola in a few moments here. And that could lead to detrimental impacts from a person's life. So that's interesting. There's very little discussion that goes into how to make sure that digital transformation is done responsibly, so that every person gets access, but also is done so responsibly with information, so they know the impact of those devices that you mentioned. It's like a weapon, right? It's like, I think you mentioned it was like a weapon. Yeah. And it can be, and it's definitely used as such by malicious actors. So I wanted to go back. You mentioned Ebola.
One thing I'll pick up on,
we can go in any direction.
When I like your I like your tie in with phishing. The reason why phishing is quite easy to like take care of when someone is trained, because you have to do a physical action to fall for the scam. You have to first open the email, and you have to secondly click on the link for you to be phished. Like when it comes to the social media platforms like WhatsApp, there is no physical barrier. Someone will send you a message. The only thing you do, you say, okay, I can say, oh, don't click on a link on WhatsApp because you don't know what it's going to do. That's basic. Well, as soon as you click on the audio file or the story or the video, it starts going into the person's mind. Then there is no on or off button, because you're already psyched in to what is playing. So there has to be a sort of mental switch in your head that's like, you need to be skeptical of news that is that is shared on WhatsApp or on Facebook and whatnot. So you need to think like, is this true? Is this this? Is this that? Let me check before sending it on. I even had an issue with one of my friends. Like, he was sending these messages about COVID, like when the disease just happened. Like, people were scared. People were really, really scared. And then these false messages, I don't even remember what they were about. They were so gruesome. They were so scary. And then I'm like, where did you get this from? Is this actually true? Is this that? Because I was also like scared, because I'm a human being. So I started panicking. I'm like, shit. So I have a friend in Canada called Alexander Blanc. So I'm like, Alex, listen, please take a listen to this and give me your opinion about it. because it's right now making the rounds in Sierra Leone. It's becoming a real problem. People are starting to believe all of these things that it's saying. So we traced the information back to a Reddit. We traced it back to a subreddit that told stories. Like they make up stories about, I won't say horror, but really, really, really good stories that are really like, if you do not know that they are from Reddit, you'd actually believe it with all of your heart. So it's like, no, man, I traced this thing back to Reddit. It was just a post that was meant to, like, someone's idea from someone's brain. And then I went back to the guy. I'm like, hey, man, this thing is from Reddit. It's not actually true. So can you please tell everyone that you send this to that this is not true and that this was actually. So that's one of the things. We need people to call out other people when they send stuff that's not verified. And if that happens, I think we can get a hold on this situation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably much easier said than done. I'm trying to imagine how you can manage
Much
and
easier
contain
said than done. Yeah.
the dissemination of information because it's so rapid. That's the beauty and the sort of the double-edged sword of digital communications, right? Because it could be used for great ways of bringing people together, but it also can be a magnifier of sending and spreading wrong information. So it's cuts both.
Yeah. It cuts both ways. And trying to go into the section about limit, like doing this is a really bad title.
Yeah.
It's not good. That's why it's either two things. It's either you start taking measures to clamp down on freedom of information, which is not good. It's really bad. Or you start raising awareness and having people verify an information at the source before like sending it out to someone else. So it's really a tightrope walk. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. So many different directions I like to go, but since you brought up awareness, what is awareness look like? Is there any campaigns around awareness in Sierra Leone? You're working as a civil servant. You've worked in different agencies as a civil servant, and you're in the forefront, it seems like, in pushing and growing cybersecurity as a professional field in the country. What does that look like? How could you see is there any public campaign efforts on awareness? And awareness can be, I see it as very broad. It doesn't have to be cybersecurity awareness. I mean, we can talk about just awareness in the use of everyday home devices with your children, devices like, or applications such as WhatsApp or Instagram or TikTok. How does that look like? Are there public campaigns or different organizations looking to provide that useful information, whether free or in the private sector?
Yeah, like one thing that has changed, the creation of the cybersecurity unit at the Ministry of Information where I work at. They have been up to some good stuff. Like last year, we started a huge awareness campaign on cybersecurity and the use of devices and the spreading of false information. But you have to know that as a human being, we are always biased against authority in a way. We are always, in a way, we're always in a way skeptical of authority. So if a government comes out and say, hey, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, and don't do that, people will always take it in a political way, in a way, So that's why I've been trying to raise awareness on my platform on LinkedIn, like every other day, because at first I was posting almost every day, but things have been quite hard right now, so I don't have the time. So that's why we all need to do our part in our own professional lives and in the private sector as well, because then we can really hit home along with the public sector in getting people to know that getting people to know that this thing that they hold in their hand, these phones that they hold, can have the power to bring up or to destroy a whole country easily just by the transfer of information. And raising awareness, like that's the cybersecurity part. like Sierra Leone is built on awareness raising campaigns. Like we are awesome. Like I love this country for that. Like during the Ebola epidemic, I mean, it was so hard to stamp Ebola out of this country and Guinea and Liberia. It was not an easy job. But what helped us was the campaigns. We have a very good system of disseminating information down to the village level, down to the last man, so that they can learn that, oh, this is what's happening, this is what needs to be done, and this is what we should do to prevent this thing from spreading. So those channels are always open, and I guess anything can ride on those channels in order to disseminate information down to the last person. So that's something that's good in Sierra Leone. Like the dissemination of information is quite fast, and I saw that.
Can you talk a little bit?
During Ebola. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how does that work to that last man or woman in a small township, a village? And that takes quite a lot of, I imagine, labor to be able to reach different audiences like across the country.
Yeah, it does. For instance, at NCRA, when we were trying to get people, I'm telling them about the importance of civil registration and how that data will help the government to like prepare like population statistics, death statistics, and prepare like budgets and whatnot for public funding and whatnot. So during that time, there is one main source of the main source of information dissemination was radio. Like the radio is timeless in Sierra Leone. Even my mom has a radio. Everyone has a radio in Sierra Leone, more or less. Although it's been going down in popularity because of smartphones and internet radio and all of that. But even if you go down to the last guy in the village, there must be someone in the village with a radio who can he can even act as the mouthpiece. Like you can just come around like to his house or his yard and you all listen to the radio and whatnot and you get the information. And then you have TVs. TVs are now being very common. Everyone, I won't say everyone, but most people have a television. So that is another good way of disseminating information. But actually going into the provinces like physically can be a huge logistical operation. But the advent of technology has made that so much more easier, because before you would have to send like massive amounts of teams to get that information. You have people with loud hailers like spreading the news. Hey, don't do this. Hey, wash your hands. Hey, do that. Do this. Do that. That's really good. People can get the message by that as well. But having technology to aid in the spreading of that message has been a very big revelation, and it's helping right now in the fight against COVID-19.
Yeah, that's interesting. The registry reminds me of like a census. That's what it feels like. Right?
Yeah, like the census is, I won't say it's different, because the census is every couple of years. The civil registration was, I guess it can double as a census, to be honest with you, but you only target a certain range of people, because when you're doing your first civil registration, you are not going to be registering. I think we didn't register under fives because the thumbprints, like when you do civil registration, you do the verification by the thumbprint. And if you start registering very young children, in 1 year, 2 years, the fingerprint, of course, will have developed and would have changed. So we were not registering young children at that time. So we were getting data from 16 and upwards on the populace. And then the births and deaths division could catch up on the younglings, like the young kids and the ones that are being born, and that could be added to the civil registration data at the same time, so we can track someone from like childhood to adulthood to I don't want to say to death, but to
death. Cradle to grave. We can go on and talk about in so many different trajectories, Dorian, that I want to go into. It's a security focus that I want to discuss, and I'm thinking religious tolerance. I mean, that's something that I know that I've been looking at when I look at different countries. And I used to live in Spain many years ago when I was in school, and I read a book called I think if I remember correctly, called the ornament of the world. And it talked about during the period about 700-800 years in Andalusia, in the southern part of Spain, where Jews, Muslims, and Christians lived together, not necessarily continuously harmonious. There's always going to be challenges, but nonetheless, there's been a lot of interesting scholars that looked at that and said how during that period of time, there was significant amounts of collaboration and beautiful intermingling between religions. And I know Sierra Leone, and many people probably might not know, is 75, 78% Muslim, right? A Sunni Muslim. But talk a little bit about that. And the religious component is fascinating.
Like, whenever I think about how blessed we are in this country, I am really happy when it comes to religious tolerance. We are, we are, I would even risk it to say we are the most religious tolerant country in the world, like almost by far. It's hard to see. Like, I remember when I was in school, we had a discussion about Christianity and Islam. It was so cultured. I mean, people could agree to disagree. That's what I love about Sierra Leone. You could tell me something, I might not agree with you, but I'm like, hey, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it's for me. And you can also move your point over to the other person. There is no, you should do this by force. You should no. I love that about Sierra Leone. And it's not only that we respect each other, but there is also a healthy amount of intermarriages between Muslims and Christians. Like, off the top of my head, I know like 8 or 9 people who I know who are married to either a Christian or a Muslim. So that is one of the great things about Sierra Leone that keeps us together, because most countries are torn apart by religious violence. It's just sad. It's just sad. I don't know why there has to be religious violence in the world, to be honest with you. Everyone can live in harmony as we're in Sierra Leone. And it's not even only like Christians and Muslims. You have a huge Indian population who practice Hinduism. They are free to practice what they want. You've got a Baha'i. You have the Baha'i faith here. They are free to practice what they want. No one is going to start cussing you out or start attacking you because of your religious beliefs. I mean, that is one of the most beautiful things about Sierra Leone, and why this country for me is extremely tolerant of everyone who is in it. Yeah, no matter your faith.
Would you say that then conflicts then mostly arise around other drivers as opposed to religion? Because it seems like even when you look at the 7 or 8 ethnic groups that make up most of Sierra Leone, that you have Christians and Muslims even within, like the Mendi or different groups, right? And so if there are conflicts, and historically or even contemporaneously, would you say that conflicts are more driven by perceived notions of tribalism, or like where would you see like the conflicts there? Because it seems like if you have that type of tolerance, you have a very bustling and engaged populace. But when it does arise and conflict does make its appearance, where would you say they arise from?
I'm pretty sure it arises from, like you said, tribalism. Like, to be honest with you, when I was younger, I did not grow up in a house that had tribes. Like, I was not told, oh, this tribe is that tribe is this. No. My father is a straight up guy. He will treat Jill as well as he will treat Jack. I mean, everyone is equal. I really didn't grow up in the tribal issue stuff, because that only came to my attention like when I was attending school. Like, there'll be some, these little disparaging remarks, this, that, this. I won't say it on video and whatnot. So I'll be like, why are people like some of them are like jokingly, and some of them had a little bit of maliciousness to it. So I like, what's wrong with me being this, or what's wrong with me being that? And it's something that I have mulled over in my mind for a very long time. And at 29 years of age, I've worked with almost every single tribe in this country. Someone I know is from some tribe. And to be honest with you, I don't see what all the fuss is about, to be honest with you. I mean, my best friend is a Timini, and I have friends who are Timinis, Mendes, Yalunkas, Vice, Gizi, Limbaz, local. So they are, like we, if we expect um, Westerners, white people, to not see color, and we are in Africa with the same color and finding something else to divide ourselves by, that is the highest form of hypocrisy for me. Because, I mean, if we are the same color, what the hell are we fighting about? Don't have if you're like, oh, there's racism in America. No, you don't have a leg to stand on if you are in your country being tribalistic. So that is something that I do not understand or even get through my head, to be honest with you, because everyone I've worked with, well, not everyone, most of the people I've worked with, when you show them respect, when you treat them like they're human beings, they respect you back and they treat you well in kind. Yeah, some people can be, I can't say that on the air. Some people can be like idiots. Yeah, everyone has that idiot once in a while, but to most people, you treat them with respect, they'll treat you back. They'll treat you back. So it starts at treating people with respect. Like there are people who I worked with 6 or 7 years ago. They still remember me. Why? Because when they were coming up, like they were maybe students or something, and I treated them with respect. I spoke with them on an equal level. I'm not going to put myself up above someone because of the knowledge I have or because of the tribe I'm from. I mean, I don't believe in that crap. So I believe that as long as you treat people with respect and decency, I mean, they will return the favor in kind sooner or later. And then the other factor in, like you said, conflict might be poverty. Like the rate of poverty in Sierra Leone, I think has been leveling off, but it's not good because COVID-19 just, wow, the coronavirus just like messed everything. It just messed everything up, man. It really just messed everything up. But one thing I'll tell you about Sierra Leone that makes me respect my people, my fellow Sierra Leoneans, is that even with the high levels of poverty, like the high levels of this, the high levels of that, if you go on the streets, you start talking to someone, the first thing you'll see is a smile as a stranger. Like you go say, hey man, like English is an international language. Like, do you know the where so and so is? Like, how do you get from here to here? The first thing you'll see is a smile. Maybe that guy has not eaten in the whole day, but he still smiles to you and tells you where you need to go in order to reach there. So Sierra Leoneans are a very warm and welcoming people, and I hope to see the day by the United Nations standard, like when Sierra Leone gets to be a middle income country, when I can only dream of that day, because then we can see Sierra Leone really blossoming into something. But we are such a good people, and we love our nation so much, and it rubs off on all of us.
Yeah. No, with that, I want to, let's go into some more aspects of beauty and culture. I'm curious because that got me thinking about a few things, the beauty of Sierra Leone and what people don't get to see, especially outside in the West, whether that's the West being the United States or the West being Europe or even in Asia, in Japan and other parts, is
in Asia.
Just beauty of Sierra Leone, the beauty of different regions of the world that people don't get a chance to really engage with, right? And people's perceptions of Sierra Leone, if they even have a perception or even know where it is, unfortunately, a lot of people's knowledge of geography and place might be limited. So we want to be able to showcase the best, and of course, be realistic too, right? Because part of showcasing the best is also saying there's room for improvement, right? You mentioned about some of the aspects of tribalisms and issues that still arise. But then there's an inflection point there is with religious tolerance. Maybe that's the way to really bring people together and saying, look, people, we're all the same. We practice Muslims, we're Christians, we're Baha'i faith, but yet we live here together and we're struggling or we're blossoming, we're booming, and we want to have an opportunity to really increase the public stage of our country. And so we want to go into a few things, because there's some things that I always find interesting in my research is Africana Fridays. Right? That's something when we talked about this offline, where you had such passion in talking about the beauty and the colors of that. So tell me a little bit about that. And does it actually something that I would see if I were to come to Sierra Leone and go to Freetown on a Friday? Is it something that I would see, or is it just something I read about online?
Yeah, it's something you'll see, because I don't know exactly how it started, but like normally when you are working at the office, you get your suit and tie, you get your coats. Like most people forget that these things come from the Western world, where in the place is cold. I mean, I can see people under 40 degrees heat with a coat and tie, and I'm like, really? You want to die? You know? So as much as you look good, prim and proper, but you have to really take into account the weather. And it's not only about weather, it's also about culture and loving your culture. The dress code of Sierra Leone was a little bit too westernized, to be honest with you. We needed a way for our culture to show through, you know, allow people to wear our own traditional clothes and our own traditional attires and our own traditional designs. So that's where the concept of Africana Friday came from. And it started gaining traction a lot in the 2000s. I'm pretty sure it happened back in before I was born, because I cannot tell you about that because I was not here. But to my knowledge, it started gaining traction in the late 2000 and like 2008 to 10s, and then the government took it up. Like, you can go to the government is the biggest employer in the country, of course. So when they put a hand on something, then it really gains traction. On Friday, you can come to the office with your nice Africana and your clothes and looking good, looking fly, you know, being proud of the heritage, like what you are and where you are from. It's not always like, I don't need a shirt and tie to use my brain. I don't need a shirt and tie to do my work. To be honest with you, I am, if I can be honest with you, I am strictly against like these tight-knit perspectives about dress codes. I mean, you're not going to go to an office with boxers on and briefs. No. People can dress decently, but it doesn't need to be, you have to dress with the shorts and the tie up here with the coat. You look good. Yeah, I'm not saying look good. You look official. For managers, I don't have a problem with that. Like banking institutions, I can get that. But like for me, I'm claustrophobic in a way. And even when I went to church, like when my mom would be like get this thing up, I'll be like that. It was at least as if I was choking. It would take a few moments for me to settle down and just give it a little bit of loosening and then go on my way. So Africana Friday has been a good thing. It has helped us to showcase our colors and our beauty and our designs. Like we have some of the best boutique makers in like West Africa as a whole. We are the best, man. There are some East African things that are really good. Like my friend came from Kenya and he got me some really awesome stuff. But Africa as a whole is so beautiful. Our fashion, our designs are filled with color. And
all right, Dorian. So we are back again. We have you back again. So there's so many places that we can go with this conversation, but I think it's definitely necessary that we have part 2. What do you think, Dorian?
That's a definite yes. That's a definite yes.
Yeah, we didn't even have a chance to talk about the importance of my favorite, rice. I mean, I ate rice growing up as a Japanese, and it's a staple of our country, and I'm sure it is in yours as well. So maybe we can leave with that. Maybe a few words on rice, and as we segue to the end and part 2.
Yeah. Rice plays a huge role in not only in our economy but in the way we live. I mean, if you take it back to the era of slavery, like a lot of landowners, slave owners in the Carolinas and in Georgia, like they would covet. Sounds weird, but they would covet like slaves from West Africa, the rice belt stretching from Senegal all the way to Liberia, with Sierra Leone included. They would covet these kind of slaves because they knew how to plant rice, and a lot of the marshy lands that rice needs to grow on, that exists on the west coast of Africa, is somewhat mirrored in the Carolinas and in the coastal areas of Georgia and the Carolinas. So they wanted the expertise from our shores to grow rice because they did not have the expertise. So rice has been there. I mean, there is a definite connection there, including to do with rice. And in everyday eating, rice is the most important meal in Sierra Leone. Very important. Even after this, I'm going to eat some rice.
I might have a little bit as well. I was going to have a what's called a poke bowl here. So they're going to have a little bit of rice. I try not to eat too much rice, for carbs purposes, but I do like rice. Yeah.
Oh man, what carbs? What carbs are you talking about, man? You look younger than I do, man.
No, I'm much older than you, actually. Yeah. But there's a variety of the preparation that's really good that I like is, I don't know what you call it in Sierra Leone, but when you burn it just slightly at the bottom and it gets kind of crunchy. Do you have that when you prepare it that way?
That is called krao. I mean, like my dad loves krao. The krao, the burnt part of the rice, it infuses a different type of flavor into the rice plus the crunchiness. Like it's really good when you're eating jollof rice. Like when you have jollof rice and you have the krao at the bottom, man, that is heaven. That is heaven, man.
All right. So next time on part 2, you're going to make sure that we're going to do 2 things. We're going to talk a little bit more about rice and maybe use that as a starting point, because there's a lot of social, economic, historical concepts and conversations that we can have about that. I mean, especially as a global economy, right? Like rice, and going back what you mentioned into the period of slavery. That's fascinating when you look at that, because there's a lot of different trajectories that we can look at, going back to the Black loyalists in the 17th century, all the way to the current moment today we are in, both in COVID and also here in the United States. So with that, Dorian, there's so many different things. I want to keep you on here. Maybe a couple of words just to entice people to come back for part 2. What do you say?
Yeah, no problem. There's a lot more to say about Sierra Leone. I mean, we might be one of the smallest countries in Africa or in the world at large, but we are one of the deepest nations on earth. And coming to Sierra Leone is an experience that no one will ever forget when they reach here, because the nature is so crazily beautiful. It's like a picture rendering on a computer. It is so beautiful and untouched, and the people are so lovely. So we have so much more to speak about in tech, in nature, in the people, and Sierra Leone's relation to the world in large, aka globalization.
Oh, wonderful. With that, tech, nature, and the opportunities, I encourage you all to maybe return back on part 2 in a few weeks. Dorian, what do you say? I think a couple of weeks we can return to this conversation. There's a lot more to explore, not just in the Cyber Awareness Show, because we're going to be taking a trip next week I think we're going to Japan. So Dorian, you want to come with us? We're going to be discussing Japan.
Yeah.
So I know you like Japan. You have a lot of interest. We didn't even get to talk about that. I know you have a fascination with Japan and a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
So my colleague in Tokyo is going to be
Japan.
joining us. Yeah. It's a great place we're going to talk about cybersecurity, but we're also going to have a cultural conversation about this thing called Ringi. It's a consensus building system that takes place within a corporation. So it's very fascinating. So with that, Dorian, thank you very much. I hope to see you soon. And to all of you all who listened out there, thank you. I will see you guys again soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.